Hello everyone, it's Deborah from Diva Lady Designs and I'm so glad you're here. Today I'm doing something a little different. I'm going to explore the idea of color and mood. I have 3 cards to share with you. I wanted to see if I could create 3 different cards using the same color scheme and the same supplies. Each card uses the color purple. Purple has many meanings, including wisdom, royalty, ambition, magic, and wealth, just to name a few. I'm going to create my flower focal points first and then do the cards. So let's get creating. For all my cards, I used a new layering die set from Altenew called Vellum. It's part of their Craft-A-Flower series. It comes with 13 dies and it makes 2 flowers. One of the things I love about Altenew is their layering guide. It shows you exactly what to cut and how in order to layer them properly. I decided to use 3 different papers for my flowers. The first one is Vellum. You'll notice that some of the dies have a keyhole in the middle. This is used to line up the layers so that it will create a flower. There are also dies with an arrow in the middle. This is for the second flower. As I said, there are also leaves and dies for stamens and the like. Now vellum is slippery, so I taped down the dies to prevent them from slipping around in the machine. Now that my flowers are cut, I'm going to make them purple using shades of Altenew Crisp dye ink. I chose Altenew Cosmic Berry and Ultraviolet for the flower petals and Warm Sunshine for the stamen. We're going to apply the ink using simple blending brushes. Now inking on vellum is kind of tricky. Vellum does not absorb ink like regular cardstock. It's slippery. So as I apply the ink, it will smear as I apply it. And I can smear the ink as I apply it, pounce on it, whatever, but it's not going to dry right away. We're going to have to use a heat source in order to dry it. As I was inking, I noticed that my fingers kept leaving prints on the ink, so I eventually used a metal tool to keep the vellum in place as I inked. I also need to apologize for the movement of the craft pad. I placed it on top of my glass mat and it kept moving as I was inking. Now in between each layer, you'll need to clean up the mat. Vellum is sheer, so any ink that I might get on the back will show through. But one nice thing about inking on vellum is that you can blend colors easily, as I will do with this second layer. After all my layers are inked, I got out my heat gun and dried the ink on the vellum. Now for this, you're going to need to use a heat-resistant vellum. Otherwise, the heat gun will cause the vellum to shrivel up, and you don't want that to happen. It's kind of cool to watch the ink dry in the vellum, and you'll notice that as it dries, the ink will lighten, giving a really sheer color. I dried all the layers of my flower, and then I layered them on top of one another. Each layer has a number that is impressed on it when it's cut, so it's super easy to put the flower together. After I layered it, I just glued them together, placing glue around the keyhole center. It's okay if the glue shows through. I'm going to cover up that part of the flower with a large sequin later. The result is a gorgeous sheer flower, which I think is perfect for a sympathy card. For my next flower, I cut the petals from different shades of purple cardstock. This cardstock is just cardstock I got from Michael's. I think it's Recollections cardstock. I just got different shades of purple. And I used shades from light to dark. I used a yellow cardstock for the stamen. For my final flower, I used an amazing product that I only recently discovered. Tonic Studios has a series of gorgeous mirrored and metallic matte cardstocks. I used 3 different shades of purple, including one iridescent purple. I love the shine and elegance of this cardstock. It's amazing. I used a matte gold from Simon Says Stamp for the stamen. And here are the 3 flowers. Look how different each one is. I really like the elegant look of the vellum, the beauty of the regular cardstock, and the grandeur of the mirrored cardstock. I decided to make a thank you card using the flowers from the regular cardstock. I really liked the bright, welcoming look of the color combo. I cut a piece of Neenah Classic Crest 80-pound cardstock to 4 by 5 1/4 inches. I also created another flower from the Altenew set and cut it from the same colored cardstocks as the first. I had this wonderful sentiment in my stash. It's fancy script words from PinkFresh Studio, and it's one of my all-time favorite sentiment sets. I used some foam squares on the back of the flowers since I wanted to layer one flower underneath the other. After I played around with the position, I glued the sentiment in the middle on top of the flowers. Then I layered the white panel on top of a dark purple panel, which is the same color as the darkest purple in the flower. And then I adhered the whole thing onto a top folding 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch white card base. I also used some solid gold sequins from Spellbinders and applied them to the center of my flowers and around the rest of the card. I love this card. It's so happy and elegant. I think I'll send this to my assistant at work. She keeps my life in order, and without her, I'd be a mess. Now let's use the elegant metallic flower to make a shiny birthday card for someone special. I created a panel from lilac cardstock cut to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8 inches. I used this beautiful Swiss dot embossing folder from Gina Designs to emboss the panel. I wanted to give the card an elegant feel, but didn't want to take away from the beauty of the flower. The embossed texture is perfect. I used some Altenew foam tape behind the flower and adhered it to the top middle of my panel. For my sentiment, I used a happy birthday strip from Hickey Designs die-cut Foilables. I love this product. I adore foiling, and it was so easy to foil using deco foil in a laminator. I'm working on a foiling video for release in mid-October, so stay tuned. I also cut some of the leaves from a gorgeous, and I mean gorgeous, iridescent sea foam green cardstock from Tonic Studios. I'm going to buy every single color of this cardstock. I love it that much. Finally, I finished the card by adding a 1/4 inch strip of the seafoam green iridescent cardstock to the left edge, and then adhered my panel to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch top folding white card base. The metallic flower gives such an elegant feel to this birthday card. For my final card, I created this beautiful sympathy card using the vellum flower. The vellum gives such a soft, introspective feel to the card, but it does present some challenges. This is probably the most difficult of the 3 cards to create. I started out placing my vellum flower on a back panel, cut to 4 by 5 1/4 inches. I loved the look of the black background, but it tended to swallow up the vellum. So finally, I hit upon the idea of cutting a bottom layer of each flower from white cardstock and layering it behind the vellum. To do this, I used a piece of Altenew's double-sided adhesive sheets. This is a great product. It's strong, holds well, and it's perfect for die cutting. I layered a piece of white cardstock, any weight will do, to a piece of the adhesive sheet. I trimmed it down for ease of cutting. Remember that we've already created the flower, so we'll have to cut the new petal so that the flower can layer on top of the adhesive, not underneath. So I'll put my dies on top of the adhesive side and run it through my die cut machine. Now I can peel off the protective layer and adhere it to the back of the flower petal. I used the center keyhole as a guide. One of the things I like about this adhesive is that it's repositionable until it dries, so I can play around with the petals. Next time I make this card, I'll cut the bottom petal from a sheet of vellum already adhered to the white cardstock. It will be much easier. I decided to emboss my black panel using the Lattice embossing folder from Gina Designs. I really liked the texture that it would give the card. Then I can place my 2 flowers on top of the black panel. For my sentiment, I'm using Hugs from the Altenew Hello and Hugs die set. I think this is my most favorite sentiment set from Altenew. I use it all the time. This particular sentiment was in my stash, so I cut a new Hugs layer from the purple-red cardstock I wanted and just glued it on top. It was perfect. Now I'm just going to add some gold sequins, and voila, I'm done. Look at that. 3 totally different cards using the same layering die set and the same color scheme. This has inspired me to look at more of my sets to see how I can use them with colors to create different looks. Color is so powerful. I encourage you to explore this idea with your favorite color. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. You can also find me on Instagram. If you liked this video, please give me a thumbs up below. And if you want more, hit the subscribe button. And if you really loved it, share this with your friends. Thank you so much for joining me today at Diva Lady Designs.